Do you believe in a spiritual awakening? What is a spiritual awakening? Well, I've been on a spiritual inquiry for almost half of my life now, and in that time it's taken me to lots of different places, different countries, different traditions. I've explored all sorts of different things, searching, looking for what? Is there an end goal? Is there an end result to all of this spiritual practice and spiritual inquiry? Well, for my own journey, I have to say, I've travelled all around the world, and I realised that ultimately whatever it is that I was searching for is right here. It always has been, and it always will be. But this is my journey, my inquiry. And it can be misleading as well when you hear about spiritual journeys, spiritual paths, because it means there's a destination, there's somewhere that it's leading you to, and that can be in itself misleading. Because if you're always searching, grasping, you're always looking towards some point in the future, well then you're not living your true life. You're always waiting, in a sense, for that better version of yourself and also the better version of your life. And anything other than right here, right now is considered to be illusionary. The future, we have absolutely no idea. The past, we have an idea, but it's not as real. Your memories, your thoughts, not as real, they're not as concrete as we like to think they are. So this searching, this spiritual journey, these paths that we walk upon are really, metaphysically, a connection with the here and now. Before you even lift your foot to take one step forwards, look around you, because this, right here, right now, is the only true reality. Now, I've been following a Hatha yoga path, a Hatha yoga tradition for many years, and I've got the benefits that I feel for it physically, mentally, emotionally. But what about spiritually? So in my tradition, the yoga tradition, they talk about 8 limbs of yoga, and it's important to realise that they are limbs. They are not steps. And this is a pitfall that many practitioners fall into, is because there seems to be an idea of a progression. And you know what comes with that idea of a progression also is spiritual superiority. Somebody's at a certain level, they've reached this certain level, and in a way they then look down upon somebody who hasn't. Outrageous, absolutely outrageous. These are limbs, they radiate from a central body, and there lies, in my eyes, there lies, in a way, the secret to the practice. Not that it is a secret, because these limbs radiate from a central self, from your true self, your true nature, your true identity. And for me, that is the spiritual inquiry. It's like peeling away the layers. Sometimes when I teach, I use the analogy that when we move through our life, we accumulate these different layers, like different items of clothing. So, you know, from kindergarten, from back when you was a small child, you get given your name, you get given a cultural identity, if you like, and these are the first layers that you put on. And then there's all the expectation of education, of what direction you're going to take in life, and then you have a job maybe, you maybe have a family. These are all layers, and delightful though life is, it can sometimes be stifling. Sometimes you've got that many layers on that you can't move, you can't breathe. And so this spiritual path, or the idea of a spiritual journey, for me, to begin with, you don't need to go anywhere. It's just a matter of noticing, recognising first of all these layers, and then you peel the layers away with your inquiry with whatever tradition you're following. So with me, the path of Hatha Yoga, the tools are meditation, pranayama, or call it breath work these days, and of course there's the physical aspects, but these are just tools. It's like a framework that you create through which you then experience maybe the spirituality. Then is there an awakening? Is there a, sudden shift from one frame of mind, from one perspective to another? Well, maybe. I'll come back to that in a moment, and I just have to say, if you like the video, help me with the algorithm. Like the video, subscribe if you're not already a subscriber, contribute if you want to help out, buy me a coffee, click on the link below. So this spiritual inquiry, this journey, and does it lead somewhere? Is there such a thing as a spiritual awakening? Well, I have to say, yes, there is. But it's not the result of many years of arduous practice or, abstention. You don't need to sit in a cave in the Himalayas. It can help. I'm not saying don't try it, but, these then become almost impossible goals. It's as if not in this life will I be able to recognise or realise these awakenings, these spiritual states, when the truth is, every day there are hundreds of little moments of awakening, but we don't usually recognise them because of all these layers, because of the busyness of our minds. And so, yes, to follow a tradition, a discipline, if you like. My experience, it requires a little bit of discipline. I get up every morning. I still get up every morning early and I do my practice. It's not like I've reached some point, some level. Every morning that I wake up, it's a new day. In a sense, it's a new me. And I use these tools of my practice. So meditation, pranayama, even the asana, it's not an exercise, it's a moving meditation. And I put lots of new content of embodied movement on the channel, which, if you've not practiced yoga before, maybe you've got this idea that yoga is this gymnastic, acrobatic sport almost. Nonsense. It's a celebration, physically of your body, celebration of your life. So what is a spiritual awakening? So I can say, again, from my tradition, they'll talk about Kundalini rising. And people ask me, it's like, you've got this badge of honour. Has your Kundalini risen? And I have no answer to these questions because why? What would it do for me to just share this sort of information? Does it put you up on a little pedestal? Is it that thing they said before about spiritual superiority? Well, my Kundalini's risen. Has yours? Nonsense. Absolute nonsense. Now, I'm not denying that there are these, sparkly, magical moments. There are things that I've experienced that go beyond what are considered to be the everyday experience of life. But that's my experience. And by me trying to tell you what they are, it's like trying to describe a dream. You just really get the basic outline, but the actual essence is completely lost and missed. And I find as a spiritual teacher, it can be misleading. It can put people off. I know people that have practiced for many, many years, and because they haven't reached this spiritual goal, this spiritual awakening, that they give up. They just give up, maybe look for something else. When, as I said right at the start of this video, the answer lies within. It's always been there. So in the Hatha Yoga tradition, we'll talk about Kundalini rising, this serpent Shakti, this feminine energy from the base of your spine, whoosh, going up through your spine, and you'll find lots of descriptions of the experience of Kundalini. I've heard all sorts of things. It can be like a 2-week orgasm, or You're rendered into such a state that you can't function in your everyday life. And again, I'm not denying that this doesn't happen to people, but I don't think it's helpful, because if it's then not happened to you, does that mean that you're failing in any way with your practice, your path? So Kundalini rising, another one, there's a Sanskrit quote, Chitta Vritti Nirodha. So yoga is the cessation of the fluctuations of your mind. Basically, no thoughts, stillness. And that happens. It happens every night when we go to sleep, when we're not dreaming. We're all in this state of mindless bliss. But as a benchmark, have I gone beyond the mind? Again, it's relative to the individual. And is it helpful for somebody to share this, to say this? Because then does it undermine your particular practice? Maybe you're sitting there with a very busy mind. There's nothing wrong with that. It's perfectly natural. So when there are these benchmarks, when there are these ideas of a goal, a final destination, I find it very misleading. And it begs the question, when you've reached that final destination, are you then resting in eternal bliss? Well, I've met a lot of people on my spiritual path, spiritual journey, and even the most, experienced, if you like, advocates of a spiritual practice, there's still tendencies I see in their lives that we're all made of the same stuff. We're all basically made up in the same way. Mind, body, emotions, breath. And so, again, I'm not a real big fan of this hierarchy of putting somebody on a pedestal, because then it's really easy to pull them then off this spiritual pedestal. So, end results, a final goal, it's misleading. I said it before, it's like waiting for a better version of yourself, a better version of your life, and you miss the magic, the phenomena of the here and now. I always know I've gone through troubling times in my life, and know when I sit here and say that, life can be tough, life can be challenging. And for me, that's where I get a strength from my inquiry, from my practice, because no matter what life is throwing at me, I've got something tangible that I can do, that I can practice, a coping strategy, if you like. And there's the realisation that whatever you are going through in your life is temporary. Life is temporary. These things, they move on, and we never know what's around the corner. Every new day is a brand new day. Every day you awaken, and it's as if you're born again. You're born into this new day, this new world. And again, with the spiritual practice, you've got the tools then to ease your way through that day, to recognise the good times, to embrace them, to rejoice in them, to realise the bad times are temporary and ephemeral in nature, as is everything. So, again, do you need to believe in a spiritual awakening? Well, I'll give you my experience, and do you know what? It's been a fairly recent realisation, quite a profound realisation. So again, just to go back to my tradition, the yoga tradition, with the 8 limbs of yoga, as I say, not steps, and these 8 limbs are radiating from this central sense of self, your true nature. And I was sat musing. I like to sit in the garden in the evening, no matter the weather, and just to see what arises in the sanctity of my mind space. And I was contemplating the meditation experience. So these 8 limbs of yoga, the 8th limb of yoga, it's called samadhi. If you're not familiar with samadhi, it's a state of pure bliss. You're beyond the mind, you're present, and make it even more confusing, there are different states of samadhi. And when I was studying it, that was my goal, if you like. That was, I was passionately hungry to explore and to experience these states. I'll tell you now, the more you search for it, the more you grasp for it, the more elusive these states become. And maybe we're looking too hard. We're making it too complicated for ourselves. Always to sort of elevate these states to some impossible, unattainable state of mind, presence, body, whatever you want to say. So just to, let's say, when my musings sat in the garden, and I was thinking about the thing I said a little bit before, that we're always sort of one step ahead of ourselves. We're always looking to improve, and there's nothing wrong with making plans, having ideas. But if you're waiting for that better version of your life, that better version of yourself, I've said it already, you miss the magic in the here and in the now. And just to take that analogy of, always looking for that better version of your life, well, we're all on a spiritual path. We're all following a path, but, we all reach the same destination. And without sounding too morbid in a way, I was reflecting on what would be my thoughts if I got the privilege, the grace to reach a very old age, and I'm lying on my deathbed, and I'm sorry if it sounds a little bit morbid, but it's an inevitability. To embrace death, to recognise death, is also to embrace life. And so I was reflecting then, thinking, if I was looking back over my life, what would the real important parts, what were the aspects of this life that I've lived that meant the most to me? And I was sitting and I was thinking, and of course, maybe you've travelled to different places, you've had different experiences, you lived in different houses, different jobs, careers, all part of life, and it's all part of living in this world. But if I'm totally true to myself and thinking, if really it's them last few breaths, it'd be the connections that I've made in this life that mean the most to me. Loving connections. Now, I know some people struggle with the concept or the idea of love, but the loving connections. So, it doesn't need to just be with people. I don't know if you hear a noise in the back. I've got my parrot sitting there that I've had 20 years, a rescue parrot. When I look at that parrot now, I'm just looking at her now, I feel something there. And it's the same when I look at my children, I look at my parents, partner. There's something that's moved, there's something that's revealed. Again, that analogy of all these layers, these clothing, and maybe with your practice, this idea of awakening, sometimes you've not stripped all the layers off, they're just sort of open a little bit, and you feel something. And this happens every day. We just miss it all through the day. Little magic moments. You might just catch the eye of a stranger as you're walking down the street, and there's something magical happens. You see the sunrise, you hear a bird singing. Something as simple as, I love a cup of tea in the morning. A sip of a cup of tea. Transported. So it doesn't mean this love doesn't have to be the all-consuming, passionate love of a relationship. It's the love of life, and it's always there. And so, do you need to believe? Do you need to believe in a spiritual awakening? Well, the more you try to search and to grasp with your mind, well, then the more elusive it becomes. To fall in love isn't to actively think about love, to pursue a love. You can try, but when you feel that love, you're being moved. It's something that's beyond your mind. Is that a spiritual awakening? Now, as I say, it's up to you to search, to find your own path, if you like, but don't get too caught up, don't get too lost in this idea of progression, look around you in the here and now, because you know what? You don't have to wait until your deathbed. You can recognise these things right now. That's the magic of this life. And in that recognition, maybe choose to live your life in accordance. Well, thank you for listening. As I say, like the video if you like it, share it, subscribe, contribute if you want to help me out. I thank you.